Seeds of compassion. The emergency room buzzed with the usual Friday night chaos. Car accidents, kitchen mishaps, and the occasional bar fight victim. For Sophia Mendez, 3 years into her nursing career at Boston Memorial, the hectic pace had become second nature. She moved efficiently between beds, her dark curly hair pulled back in a practical bun, eyes alert despite the exhaustion of a 12-hour shift. "Just one more patient, then you can go," Dr. Patel said, handing her a chart. "Possible broken ribs, contusions found in the alley behind the convenience store on Warren Street." Sophia nodded, pulling back the curtain to find a man in his early 30s hunched on the edge of the bed. His clothes were tattered, face bruised with dried blood crusting his left eyebrow. Despite his condition, there was a quiet dignity in his posture. "I'm Sophia. I'll be your nurse tonight," she said gently. "And you are?" "Dominic," he replied, voice hoarse. "Dominic Walsh." As she took his vitals, Sophia noticed the calluses. On his hands, the worn wedding band he still wore despite its obvious emptiness, and the way he winced when he thought she wasn't looking. "On a scale of 1 to 10, how's your pain?" 4, he said unconvincingly. "Let's try that again with honesty this time," Sophia replied with a small smile. Dominic's eyes, a deep amber color, met hers briefly. 8, he admitted. While treating his wounds, Sophia learned fragments of his story. An aerospace engineer who'd lost his job during company layoffs, then his house, then his wife. 6. Months on the streets had left him vulnerable to the group of teenagers who'd cornered him for the few dollars in his pocket. "They didn't need to beat me," he said quietly. "I would have given them what little I had." The X-rays confirmed 2 cracked ribs, but nothing requiring surgery. As her shift ended, Sophia found herself unable to simply discharge him back to the streets. She made a decision that surprised even herself. "Wait here," she told Dominic, before disappearing. 20 minutes later, she returned with a backpack containing a clean t-shirt, sweatpants, a prepaid phone with 3 months of service, and a paper bag from the hospital cafeteria. "The clothes were my brother's," she explained. "He left them at my apartment months ago. The phone has my number programmed in, and there's a sandwich, apple, and some cookies in there." Dominic stared at her offerings, confusion written across his face. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Sophia shrugged. "Because someone once did something similar for my father. When he first came to this country with nothing, he never forgot that kindness. Neither have I." She also pressed $200 into his palm, money she'd been saving for a weekend trip to New York. "There's a shelter on Dorchester Avenue that has a good employment program. Ask for Thomas. Tell him Sophia sent you." Dominic's eyes welled with tears. He tried to blink away. "I don't know how to repay this." "You don't," Sophia said simply. "Just remember it when you're back on your feet someday and pass it on to someone else who needs it." As she helped him gather his few belongings, Dominic asked, "Do you always rescue strays, Sophia Mendez?" She smiled. "Only the ones with kind eyes who underreport their pain levels." That made him laugh, then wince from his ribs. "I'll remember that. And you." They parted ways at the hospital entrance, Sophia heading to the subway station while Dominic walked toward Dorchester. Neither looked back, unaware that the threads of their lives, momentarily intertwined, would remain connected by that single act of compassion. 5 years would pass before fate would bring them together again, in circumstances neither could have imagined on that cool autumn night. By then, Sophia would no longer be the confident young nurse with dreams of advancement and adventure. And Dominic Walsh would be transformed in ways that would render him almost unrecognizable to everyone except the woman who had once seen his true worth beneath the bruises and despair. But that night, as Sophia rode the subway home to her modest apartment, she thought of Dominic only briefly, hoping he would find his way. Then she turned her mind to her upcoming date with Julian Pierce, the charming real estate developer she'd met at her friend's gallery opening. Their whirlwind romance was just beginning, and Sophia, always practical and level-headed, allowed herself to dream of the possibilities ahead. She could never have predicted how that dream would become a nightmare, nor how her small act of kindness would one day return to her 1,000-fold. Gilded betrayal. 5 years later, Sophia Pierce stood in the marble-floored kitchen of her Beacon Hill townhouse, one hand resting on her 7-month pregnant belly as she stared at the text message that had just shattered her world. "Sorry, babe. Meant to send that to Julian. Don't wait up for our dinner plans." V attached was a photo of lingerie laid out on hotel bedsheets, sheets Sophia recognized from the Four Seasons, where Julian claimed he was staying for a crucial development meeting with investors. Vivian Carter, her husband's glamorous business partner, the woman who had been a guest at their wedding 3 years ago, who had sent expensive baby gifts just last month, who had looked Sophia in the eye countless times over dinner parties, while secretly carrying on with Julian. Sophia's hands trembled as she set down her phone. The signs had been there: late nights, mysterious weekend conferences, the growing emotional distance as her pregnancy progressed. But Julian had been so convincing in his denials, making her feel irrational and hormonal for questioning him. She sank onto a kitchen stool, her mind racing. Should she confront him? Pretend she hadn't seen the message? As a pediatric nurse, practitioner now, Sophia had counseled countless women through crisis situations, yet here she was, frozen in her own. The front door opened, and Julian's voice called out, "Sophia, are you home?" He appeared in the doorway, tall and impeccably, dressed in a tailored navy suit, his dark blonde hair artfully styled. At 42, Julian Pierce was at the height of his success with Pierce Development Group, which specialized in luxury properties throughout New England. "I thought you were in meetings all day," Sophia said quietly. Julian's smile faltered slightly. "Wrapped up early, thought I'd surprise you." "Like Vivian surprised me?" Sophia held up her phone. Julian's expression shifted from confusion to recognition, then settled into something more calculated. He sighed, loosening his tie as he placed his briefcase on the counter. "I was going to tell you after the baby was born," he said, his tone suddenly businesslike. "I didn't want to stress you during the pregnancy." "How considerate," Sophia replied, her voice hollow. "How long? Does it matter?" "It does to me." Julian poured himself a scotch from the crystal decanter. "Almost 2 years." The timeline hit Sophia like a physical blow. 2 years, which meant their entire marriage had been a lie, including their fertility treatments and the joyous announcement of her pregnancy after months of trying. "Why?" she whispered. Julian swirled his drink. "Vivienne understands my ambitions. She's part of that world, the connections, the investors, the vision I have for the company." He glanced at Sophia's belly. "You became comfortable, domestic, always talking about your patients, wanting to move to the suburbs." "Because we're having a child," Sophia said incredulously. "A child I never particularly wanted," Julian replied, the cruelty of his words hanging in the air between them. Sophia stood shakily. "So what happens now?" "I've already spoken with my attorneys. You'll receive a settlement, generous, but not excessive. The prenup you signed limits your claims significantly." "The prenup I signed had a fidelity clause," Sophia countered. Julian's smile was cold. "Which requires proof that would stand up in court. My lawyers against whatever evidence you think you have. Please, Sophia, be reasonable." "And the baby?" Something like annoyance flickered across Julian's handsome features. "I'll provide financial support, of course. But Vivian and I will be traveling extensively. Building the international division of PDG requires a certain lifestyle that isn't compatible with midnight feedings and playgrounds. The casual dismissal of their child, her child, ignited something in Sophia that burned through her shock. You don't get to simply opt out of being a father. I'm giving you an out, Sophia. Take it graciously. Julian checked his watch. I have dinner plans. We can discuss logistics tomorrow. With Vivian? Sophia asked. Julian didn't bother denying it. She's flying in from London. We're meeting with Singaporean investors. Does she know you're leaving your pregnant wife? It was her idea, Julian said bluntly. The house will go on the market next month. My assistant will contact you about finding suitable alternative accommodations. Sophia stared at this stranger wearing her husband's face. When did you become this person, Julian? I've always been this person, he replied. You just chose not to see it. 2 weeks later, Sophia found herself locked out of their home, her credit cards canceled, and her belongings packed into storage. Julian's legal team had moved with ruthless efficiency, presenting her with documents that seemed to nullify every protection she thought she had. The generous settlement turned out to be contingent on her signing a non-disclosure agreement and waiving claims to Julian's business assets. When she refused, citing the fidelity clause in their prenup, Julian's attorney Philip Hargrove smiled thinly and slid a folder across the table. Mr. Pierce anticipated your resistance, he said. This contains evidence suggesting financial improprieties at the free clinic where you volunteer. Improprieties that coincide with your access to pharmaceutical supplies. Nothing definitively criminal, but certainly enough to trigger an investigation. That would jeopardize your nursing license. That's absurd, Sophia gasped. I've never... Facts are irrelevant, Mrs. Pierce. The suggestion alone would be devastating to your career. Additionally, he continued, Mr. Pierce has influential connections at Boston Memorial. How confident are you in your employment prospects after a messy public divorce battle? Sophia felt cornered, outmaneuvered by Julian's ruthlessness. With her savings dwindling and a baby due in less than 2 months, she signed the papers, receiving just enough to cover a few months' rent in a small apartment in Dorchester, far from the glittering world she'd inhabited as Julian's wife. As she left the law office, clutching the settlement check and restraining tears, Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hope you didn't actually believe he would let you keep anything. Enjoy motherhood in obscurity. V. In that moment, standing on the cold Boston sidewalk with one hand protectively over her unborn child, Sophia Mendez Pierce made a silent promise. She would survive this. She would rebuild. And somehow, someday, she would reclaim the dignity that Julian and Vivian had so callously stripped away. She didn't yet know that fate had already set in motion the events that would bring that promise to fruition, or that the seeds of compassion she had planted years ago were about to bloom in the most unexpected way. Adrift in darkness November in Boston brought bitter winds that cut through Sophia's inadequate coat as she emerged from her third unsuccessful job interview in a week. At nearly 8 months pregnant, the polite rejections were becoming familiar. Employers, concerned about immediate maternity leave, reluctant to train someone who would soon be absent. Her modest apartment in Dorchester, a far cry from the Beacon Hill townhouse, now felt like a luxury she might not be able to maintain. Julian's settlement. Money was dwindling faster than anticipated. The hospital where she'd worked had mysteriously eliminated her position during departmental restructuring, though her former colleagues' awkward avoidance told her Julian's influence was the true cause. Sophia pulled her coat tighter, blinking, back tears of frustration as she waited for the bus. Her phone buzzed with a text from her landlord, a reminder that rent was due in 3 days. She deleted it without responding, having no answer to give. The bus was late. 20 minutes passed, then 30, as the temperature dropped and the sky darkened with approaching snow. When the electronic sign finally indicated a service disruption, Sophia nearly broke down. The next bus wouldn't arrive for another hour, and her swollen feet were already aching unbearably. She spotted a cafe across the street, a place to warm up at least. Counting the few dollars in her wallet, she made her way inside, the warmth momentarily overwhelming after the frigid outdoors. "Just a hot water with lemon, please," she told the barista, selecting the cheapest option. As she waited, a wave of dizziness washed over her. Sophia reached for the counter to steady herself, but her hand met empty air. The room tilted alarmingly, voices becoming distant as darkness crept into the edges of her vision. "Ma'am? Are you all right?" The world went black before she could answer. Sophia woke to unfamiliar surroundings, a softly lit room with elegant, minimalist furnishings. She lay on a comfortable couch beneath a cashmere throw, her shoes removed and a pillow carefully placed beneath her head. "You're awake." "Good." The voice came from a man sitting in an armchair nearby, his attention divided between her and a laptop, balanced on the arm of his chair. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, though Sophia couldn't place him. "Where am I?" she asked, struggling to sit up. "My office. Above the cafe." He closed his laptop and moved closer, concern evident in his expression. "You fainted. The doctor said it was a combination of low blood sugar, dehydration, and exhaustion, not uncommon in the third trimester, but concerning nonetheless." "Doctor?" "Dr. Patel. She came immediately when I called. She's an old friend." The name triggered something in Sophia's memory. "From Boston Memorial?" "The same." He smiled, and suddenly Sophia felt a jolt of recognition. "Dominic?" she whispered, disbelieving. His smile widened, amber eyes crinkling at the corners. "You remember me?" "Dominic Walsh, the homeless man she'd helped in the ER 5 years ago." Except, this wasn't the same broken, desperate person she remembered. This Dominic stood tall and confident, dressed in a well-tailored suit, his formerly matted hair now cut short and neat, his once gaunt face filled out and healthy. "Of course I remember," Sophia said. "But how? What happened to you?" Dominic sat on the edge of the coffee table. "The short version? I followed your advice. Went to that shelter on Dorchester Avenue, met Thomas. He got me into their employment program, which led to a coding boot camp for people experiencing homelessness. Turns out I had a knack for it." He gestured to their surroundings. "Now I run Terra Nova Tech. We started as a small web development shop 4 years ago. Now we specialize in software for sustainable architecture and environmental monitoring systems." "That's incredible," Sophia said, genuinely amazed at the transformation. "What's incredible," Dominic countered, "is finding you again. Though I wish it were under better circumstances." His expression grew serious. "Dr. Patel says you need rest, proper nutrition, and reduced stress. She mentioned you didn't have emergency contacts listed." Sophia looked away, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "I'm between situations at the moment." "Sophia," Dominic said gently, "you helped me when I had nothing. Please let me return the favor. Tell me what's happening. Perhaps it was pregnancy hormones or exhaustion, or simply the genuine concern in his eyes." But Sophia found herself telling him everything. Julian's betrayal, the locked doors, the threatened career sabotage, her dwindling resources and growing desperation. Dominic listened without interruption, his expression darkening as her story unfolded. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Stay here tonight," he finally said. "There's a guest suite upstairs. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps. I can't impose—" "You're not imposing. You're accepting help from someone who once needed yours." His tone brooked no argument. "Besides, there's a snowstorm coming. The buses won't be running." Too exhausted to protest further, Sophia nodded. The guest suite turned out to be a spacious apartment above the offices, with a view of the snow-covered street below. Fresh flowers sat on the dining table, and the refrigerator was stocked with healthy foods. Dominic showed her around briefly before excusing himself. "Dr. Patel left instructions for your care," he said, handing her a sheet of paper. "She'll stop by tomorrow to check on you. My number's programmed into the house phone if you need anything." Sophia sat on the edge of the bed after he left, overwhelmed by the sudden change in her circumstances. Just hours ago, she'd been contemplating which possessions she could sell next. Now she was in a safe, warm place, with medical care arranged and no immediate financial pressure. The contrast to Julian's cold abandonment couldn't have been sharper. Her estranged husband had discarded her despite their vows, their history, their unborn child. This man, practically a stranger, had stepped in to help with no obligation beyond human decency. As the snow fell silently outside her window, Sophia allowed herself a moment of release. The tears came quietly at first, then in heaving sobs that released weeks of pent-up fear and hurt. When they finally subsided, she felt lighter, as though a poisonous weight had begun to lift. That night, she slept deeply for the first time in months, her dreams untroubled by anxiety. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight, at least, she and her baby were safe. Downstairs in his office, Dominic Walsh made a series of phone calls to his attorney, to a private investigator, to Dr. Patel, with additional questions about prenatal care. As midnight approached, he stood at his window watching the snow transform the city into something pristine and new. "I promised I'd remember," he said quietly to his reflection. And I do. The search he'd begun on his laptop remained open. Julian, Pierce Development Group. The results showed a smiling Julian at a recent charity gala, his arm around a striking blonde woman identified as Vivian Carter. Dominic's expression hardened. He'd once been powerless against those who had harmed him. Sophia had changed that trajectory with a single act of kindness. Now it was his turn to change hers, and perhaps settle a score with the man who had so casually discarded someone precious. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city's scars and secrets beneath a blanket of white, promising a different world by morning. Sheltered Heart's dawn broke with sunlight glinting off fresh snow, transforming Boston into a winter wonderland. Sophia woke feeling more rested than she had in months, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings before remembering the previous day's events. A soft knock at the door preceded Dr. Patel's entrance. The doctor's warm smile hadn't changed since their days working together at Boston Memorial. "Good morning, Sophia. How are you feeling today?" The examination was thorough but gentle. When it was complete, Dr. Patel sat beside Sophia on the sofa. "Your blood pressure is still elevated, and you're showing early signs of preeclampsia," she said frankly. "Bed rest isn't mandatory yet, but you need to drastically reduce stress and increase your nutrition." "That's easier said than done," Sophia replied, "which is why I've already discussed options with Dominic." Dr. Patel checked her watch. "He should be back shortly. In the meantime, eat breakfast." She pointed to the covered tray on the dining table. "Doctor's orders." After Dr. Patel left, Sophia discovered the tray contained a perfect breakfast: whole grain toast, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, and prenatal vitamins arranged neatly beside a glass of calcium-fortified orange juice. A small note in precise handwriting read, "Eat everything, no arguments." She was just finishing when Dominic arrived carrying several shopping bags. "Good morning," he greeted her. "Dr. Patel updated me on your condition. We need to talk about arrangements." "Arrangements?" Sophia set down her juice glass. Dominic placed the bags on a chair and sat across from her. "I have a proposal. It's not charity. It's a practical solution that benefits us both." He outlined his plan succinctly. Sophia would move into the fully furnished apartment above his office building. In exchange, once she was medically cleared after delivery, she would provide her healthcare expertise to Terra Nova's new wellness initiative for employees. The position came with a competitive salary, flexible hours, and comprehensive benefits. "You need stability right now," Dominic explained. "I need someone with medical training who understands what it's like to rebuild from nothing." Sophia studied him carefully. "This feels too convenient, Dominic." "Of course it is. I've been looking for someone with your qualifications for months." He smiled slightly. "The universe delivered you right to my doorstep, or rather, my cafe floor. I don't want pity." "This isn't pity, Sophia. This is repayment of a debt." His expression grew serious. "You once told me to remember your kindness when I was back on my feet and to pass it on. I'm simply following instructions." Sophia felt the baby kick, as if offering an opinion. After a moment's consideration, she nodded. "All right, but I want everything in writing, and I'll start working as soon as medically possible." "I would expect. Nothing less," Dominic replied, the respect evident in his voice. The following weeks established a new rhythm to Sophia's life. The apartment became home, gradually filled with baby essentials that mysteriously appeared: a crib, changing table, rocking chair, tiny clothes in neutral colors. When Sophia questioned these gifts, Dominic shrugged. "Company policy. All expectant Terra Nova employees receive a nesting package." "I'm not officially an employee yet," she pointed out. "Consider it an advance on your signing bonus." December brought heavy snow and holiday decorations throughout the building. Sophia found herself invited to the Terra Nova holiday party where she was welcomed warmly by Dominic's employees. For the first time since Julian's betrayal, she felt part of a community again. After the party, Dominic helped her back to her apartment, careful on the slippery walkway. "You didn't have to leave early on my account," Sophia said as they reached her door. "I didn't. I left early because my pregnant friend shouldn't be walking home alone in a snowstorm." Friend. The word felt right, Sophia realized. Over the past weeks, Dominic had become exactly that, bringing her tea during late-night bouts of insomnia, accompanying her to prenatal appointments, even assembling baby furniture while she directed from the comfort of the rocking chair. Their conversations flowed easily, covering everything from childhood memories to professional aspirations. Dominic spoke of his aerospace engineering background, his fall into homelessness after his wife left and depression derailed his career, and how Sophia's intervention had pulled him back from the brink. Sophia shared stories of her nursing career, her whirlwind romance with Julian, and her dreams for her child's future. What she didn't share were the increasingly complicated feelings developing toward Dominic himself, the flutter in her chest when he smiled, the comfort of his steady presence, the way his hand on her shoulder could instantly calm her anxieties. Such feelings seemed inappropriate given her circumstances. Pregnant, technically still married, emotionally raw. Besides, Dominic had shown no indication of seeing her as anything beyond a friend and professional colleague. Christmas Eve arrived with a gentle snowfall. Sophia was arranging pine branches in a vase when Dominic knocked, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate and a small wrapped package. "I thought you might like company," he said. "Unless you'd prefer to be alone?" "Company would be nice," Sophia admitted, accepting the steaming mug gratefully. They sat before the electric fireplace, watching snow accumulate on the windowsill while Christmas music played softly in the background. The moment felt intimate, peaceful, a stark contrast to the previous year's elaborate holiday gala she'd attended with Julian, where she'd spent the evening making small talk with people whose names she could barely remember. "I have something for you," Dominic said, handing her the wrapped package. Inside was a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a compass rose. "It's beautiful," Sophia whispered, running her finger over the intricate design. "When I was at my lowest point after you helped me, I kept thinking about direction, how I'd lost mine, and how your kindness pointed me back toward a path forward." Dominic took the necklace, gesturing for her to turn so he could fasten it around her neck. "I thought you might need a reminder that you'll find your direction again, too." The pendant rested just above her heart, cool against her skin. When she turned back to thank him, Sophia found Dominic watching her with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. "I didn't get you anything," she said, suddenly embarrassed. "You already gave me the most important gift years ago," he replied. "You saw me, really saw me, when I was invisible to everyone else." Something shifted in the air between them, a tension both fragile and electric. Dominic reached out, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sophia, his..." Words were interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Dominic rose to answer it, revealing a courier with a certified letter for Sophia. The envelope contained divorce papers from Julian's attorneys, along with a terse note indicating their court. Date was set for January 15th, just 3 weeks before her due date. The coldly worded document made clear that Julian was contesting any meaningful child support and seeking to limit his parental obligations as much as legally possible. Sophia's hands trembled as she read the detailed dismissal of their marriage, the clinical language stripping away any pretense that their relationship had ever held meaning for Julian. "He doesn't even want to meet his own child," she said, voice breaking. "How can someone be so callous?" Dominic sat beside her, not touching but close enough that she could feel his steadying presence. "Some people are incapable of seeing beyond their own desires," he said quietly. "It reflects nothing about your worth or your child's." "I should have seen it," Sophia whispered. "There were so many signs." "We rarely see clearly when we're in love," Dominic replied. "That's not weakness. It's humanity." She looked up at him, struck by the understanding in his eyes. "How did you become so wise?" "Rock bottom offers a unique perspective," he said with a hint of a smile. "And excellent strangers sometimes appear with backpacks full of hope." Impulsively, Sophia reached for his hand. "Thank you for everything." Dominic's fingers intertwined, with hers warm and secure. "You're not alone in this, Sophia. Whatever happens next, remember that." As midnight approached, they remained on the sofa, talking softly about everything and nothing, their hands still linked. Outside, Boston slept beneath its blanket of snow, and somewhere in the distance, church bells began to toll the arrival of Christmas Day. Sophia felt the baby move, a gentle reminder of the future growing within her. For the first time in months, that future didn't seem frightening or uncertain. Instead, it felt like possibility, like a compass pointing toward an unexpected destination. When Dominic finally rose to leave, he paused at the door. "Merry Christmas, Sophia." "Merry Christmas, Dominic." After he left, Sophia stood at the window, watching his footprints in the snow gradually fill with fresh flakes until they disappeared completely. Her hand drifted to the compass pendant at her throat, then to her rounded belly. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her unborn child. Better than okay. And for the first time since Julian's betrayal, she truly believed it. Full circle. The January morning dawned clear and cold, sunlight glinting off ice-covered trees outside the courthouse. Sophia sat straight-backed beside her attorney, Elena Rodriguez, a formidable litigator who had taken her case pro bono after hearing about Julian's tactics. "Remember," Elena whispered, "don't let him provoke you. Stay calm. Answer only what's asked." Sophia nodded, one hand absently touching the compass pendant that hadn't left her neck since Christmas Eve. At nearly 9 months pregnant, she felt both vulnerable and powerful, her body a testament to strength Julian had never appreciated. The courtroom doors opened. Julian entered with Vivian and his attorney, Philip Hargrove. Julian looked thinner, his confident stride slightly diminished, though his expression remained arrogant as he passed Sophia without acknowledgement. Judge Harriet Washington entered, her keen eyes taking in the parties before her. Pierce versus Pierce. Dissolution of marriage with contested child support and custody arrangements. Let's proceed. What followed was a clinical dissection of a 3-year marriage. Julian's attorney presented their prenuptial agreement, arguing for minimal support despite Julian's considerable assets. Elena countered with evidence of the fidelity clause violation, presenting the text messages Sophia had preserved. Hargrove dismissed these as misinterpreted communications between business partners, but Judge Washington's skeptical expression suggested she wasn't convinced. As the proceedings continued, Sophia noticed Julian and Vivienne exchanging increasingly tense whispers. Vivienne seemed agitated, checking her phone frequently. During a brief recess, Sophia overheard fragments of their heated conversation. Can't be happening today. Everything under control. Singaporeans pulling out. When court resumed, Judge Washington addressed Julian directly. Mr. Pierce, your financial disclosures seem incomplete. Several assets appear to have been omitted or undervalued. Julian shifted uncomfortably. My business dealings are complex, Your Honor. Any omissions were unintentional. Intentional or not, this court requires complete transparency. The judge's tone was unyielding. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. Mr. Pierce, I expect updated disclosures. By then, or sanctions will apply. As they prepared to leave, Dominic slipped into the courtroom, taking a seat behind Sophia. His presence provided silent support as Julian approached, his expression thunderous. Enjoying your performance as the abandoned wife? Julian hissed, low enough that only Sophia could hear. This delay changes nothing. You'll get what I decide to give you, which is barely enough to keep you off welfare. Before Sophia could respond, Dominic stood. Mr. Pierce, he said calmly. We haven't been formally introduced. Dominic Walsh. Julian glanced dismissively at Dominic's extended hand. I don't recall asking for your name. No, but you'll remember it soon enough. Dominic's smile didn't reach his eyes. I believe your attorney has some urgent messages waiting. Something about Singaporean investors? Julian's face paled slightly. He turned without another word, striding toward Hargrove, who was indeed frantically gesturing from the doorway. What was that about? Sophia asked as they left the courthouse. Just a hunch, Dominic replied. Let's get you home. You need rest. That evening, breaking news flashed across financial channels. Pierce Development Group was under investigation for alleged securities fraud and misrepresentation to foreign investors. Trading of PDG stock was temporarily suspended amidst rumors of imminent bankruptcy. When Sophia questioned Dominic about his earlier comment, he shrugged. Terra Nova developed compliance software used by several international investment firms. We've been tracking irregularities in certain development projects for months. The Singaporeans were simply the first to connect the dots. Did you report Julian? Sophia asked, unsure how she felt about the possibility. I didn't need to. His business practices did that for him. Dominic's expression softened. Justice has its own timeline, Sophia. Sometimes all it needs is for someone to stop enabling the deception. 3 days later, at her weekly checkup, Dr. Patel frowned at Sophia's blood pressure readings. The preeclampsia is worsening, she said. I'm admitting you today. Will likely need to induce labor within 48 hours. Everything happened quickly after that. Sophia was settled into a private room at Boston Memorial, monitoring equipment beeping steadily as medication was administered to prepare her body for induction. Dominic arrived with her hospital bag and didn't leave, camping in the visitor's chair despite Sophia's protests. When contractions began in earnest the following morning, he supported her through each wave of pain, his calm presence anchoring her through the mounting intensity. You don't have to stay, Sophia gasped between contractions. I know, Dominic replied simply. I want to. 14 hours later, Amelia Grace Mendez entered the world with a powerful cry. her tiny fists clenched as if ready to fight for her place in it. As the nurses cleaned and weighed her, Sophia collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but triumphant. "She's perfect," Dominic whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Would you like to hold her?" the nurse asked, approaching with the swaddled newborn. Dominic looked to Sophia for permission. At her nod, he carefully accepted the tiny bundle, cradling Amelia with surprising confidence. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "You have your mother's strength. The world doesn't stand a chance against you two." Watching them together, this man who had once been broken holding her daughter with such tenderness, Sophia felt something expand in her chest, a certainty that transcended the exhaustion and pain and uncertainty of the past months. In the days that followed as mother and daughter recovered in the hospital, news of Julian's downfall dominated headlines. Pierce Development Group had declared bankruptcy. Julian and Vivian had fled to an undisclosed location, reportedly ahead of federal indictments for investor fraud. The empire built on deception had crumbled spectacularly. Elena Rodriguez arrived with news that Judge Washington had granted an emergency ruling in Sophia's favor, securing child support from Julian's remaining assets before they could be seized by creditors. "It won't be the fortune he originally controlled," Elena explained, "but it's enough to ensure Amelia's education and future needs are covered, regardless of whether Julian ever returns to face charges." 1 week after Amelia's birth, Sophia and her daughter moved back into the apartment above Terra Nova's offices. Dominic had transformed the space in her absence, adding nursery murals and a custom mobile of stars and planets that slowly rotated above the crib. "An aerospace engineer never quite loses his fascination with the cosmos," he explained when Sophia admired it. Life settled into a new pattern: midnight feedings, baby smiles, the gradual healing of Sophia's body and heart. Spring arrived, bringing fresh beginnings as Boston thawed from winter's grip. Sophia began working part-time, developing Terra Nova's wellness program, often with Amelia sleeping peacefully in a bassinet beside her desk. Dominic remained a constant presence, his relationship with both Sophia and Amelia deepening with each passing day. He never pushed for more, content to move at whatever pace Sophia set, his patience a balm to her still-healing trust. On a warm May evening, as they sat on the rooftop garden Dominic had installed, Amelia slept in her carrier nearby while they shared a quiet dinner. "I received the final divorce decree today," Sophia said, watching for his reaction. "It's officially over." Dominic nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "How do you feel?" "Free," Sophia replied honestly, "like I can finally look forward without shadows from the past obscuring the view." They sat in comfortable silence as twilight descended over Boston, the city lights beginning to twinkle against the darkening sky. "Do you remember what you told me that night in the ER?" Dominic asked suddenly. "When I asked how I could repay your kindness?" Sophia smiled at the memory. "I said you didn't need to. Just pass it on to someone else when you were back on your feet." "I've tried to honor that," he said softly. "The shelter program that helped me. Terra Nova funds it now. We've hired 17 graduates as developers. But there's something else I never told you." He reached into his pocket, extracting a worn piece of paper. "I kept this all these years. It was the note Sophia had written 5 years ago with her phone number and the shelter address, faded now, edges frayed but still legible. When things got difficult, I would look at this and remember that someone, you, had seen value in me when I couldn't see it myself." Dominic's amber eyes held hers steadily. "It became my talisman, my reminder that kindness exists in the world without agenda or expectation." He carefully refolded the note, returning it to his pocket. "I've been trying to find the right moment to tell you something, but I was afraid of complicating your life when you needed simplicity." Sophia's heart quickened. "Tell me now." "I love you," Sophia, Dominic said simply. Not out of gratitude or obligation. Not because you needed rescuing. I love your strength, your compassion, your resilience. I love the mother you are to Amelia. I love the future I can imagine building with you. If that's something you might want, too. The words hung between them, honest and unadorned. Sophia reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his as naturally as they had on Christmas Eve. When Julian left me, I thought I'd never trust again, she said quietly. But you showed me that trust isn't built on grand gestures or promises. It's built day by day, in small moments of consistency and truth. She touched the compass pendant at her throat. You helped me find my direction when I was lost. And somewhere along the way, that direction led straight to you. Dominic's eyes held a question. In answer, Sophia leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Their kiss was gentle at first, then deepening with the certainty of two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed. Not perfection, but honesty. Not rescue, but partnership. When they finally drew apart, Sophia smiled. I love you too, Dominic Walsh. And yes, I want that future. With you, with Amelia, with whatever comes next. From her carrier, Amelia stirred, her tiny hand reaching upward as if in blessing of what had just transpired. Dominic lifted her carefully, settling her between them as the first stars appeared overhead. 5 years earlier, a simple act of kindness in an emergency room had connected their lives with an invisible thread. Through darkness and light, that thread had strengthened, binding them together in ways neither could have imagined. Full circle, Dominic murmured, his arm around Sophia as they gazed at the sleeping infant between them. No, Sophia corrected gently. A new beginning. Above them, stars continued their ancient dance across the sky. Witnesses to the extraordinary power of compassion returned, of love freely given, of broken hearts made whole again, not despite their scars, but because of them. And in that moment of perfect understanding, two people who had once saved each other found the greatest salvation of all, the courage to believe in second chances and the wisdom to recognize them when they appeared.